With 2023 free agency pretty much wrapping up with all the big names signing to new destinations or re-signing, it's now time to look at the winners and losers of the offseason. Now, this offseason wasn't the biggest, as like last season was pretty big, or 2019 free agency was insane with, of course, KD, Kawhi, all changing teams, but still, there were some consequential moves that I think can make some big impact on next season. And maybe there isn't like a clear big winner and loser, but there's definitely a bunch of teams that fall into this category. So before we start, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, as it further motivates me to make more videos like this. So that being said, let's get started. So the first winner, and I think pretty much everyone says, a majority of people are saying that they are perhaps the biggest winner, has to be the LA Lakers, because they not only re-signed their players that pushed them to the conference finals, but they also got some additional support players. It didn't go after the big name, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, he's still LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and assuming they can stay healthy, now that is a big if, this team is no doubt a title contender. And they're still built around their stars pretty well. Everyone besides Jackson Hayes is a competent shooter, and honestly, for the spacing of a LeBron James team, that's really good. They re-signed Austin Reeves on a reasonable deal, especially in rumors that he would get more money from like the Spurs. And honestly, getting him for a 4-year, $56 million deal, I think in a couple seasons that can be an absolute steal, one of the best contracts in the entire league. And then re-signed Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell, while also signing Gabe Vincent, Cam Reddish, and Jackson Hayes. And this team is going to be pretty solid. It's one of the best LeBron Laker teams. They also have Taurean Prince, another 3-and-D player, and having all this spacing, and they're not even like an old team. Like 2 years ago when they had Russ, that team was not good because they didn't have spacing, and they were just old. But this team has a good blend of shooting, defense, youth, athleticism, and maybe you hope that they can sign another backup center, especially you don't want AD playing the center the whole season. But like honestly, the Lakers and Rob Pelinka's been a really good GM over these last 6 months, and if he can build off of this, hopefully LeBron and AD can stay healthy. Of course, a big if, but if they can stay healthy, this Laker team is no doubt dangerous. So the next team that falls into the winner category is the Phoenix Suns, and considering the context of the Suns situation, they got some pretty solid role players. I mean, they're of course way over the salary cap with just 4 players: Devin Booker, traded for Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton, all on max contracts, and 2 of them on super maxes. And so they only had minimum contracts to work with, and honestly, they got some pretty solid players that fit on the scene. They added Eric Gordon, Yuta Nabi, Keita Bates-Diop, Metu, Drew Eubanks, re-signed Josh Okogie, still have campaign, and they just have to build that bench, and hopefully, I'm sure they're hoping they can get that 5th guy to pair alongside those 4 guys, and maybe that can be Eric Gordon shooting or Yuta's 3-and-D style of play. But honestly, of course, they didn't get any like big names. Like just rounding out the rotation is what they need. I mean, these players know that yes, maybe they have to take a pay cut to sign with the Suns, but like if they can play well, they're gonna have minutes available for them, and maybe in the future they can sign for a bigger deal. And we've seen teams that have star players and a bunch of players that pretty much deserve more money, like Eric Gordon, like a Yuta Nabi. They signed with this team to prove themselves, and then next year they're going to get a big contract. So we'll see if this works. Hopefully they can get that 3-and-D player to, of course, address their flaws. Their depth is not good still. Their defense is pretty lackluster, but I'm slowly liking this team more. It's becoming a little bit more deep. I mean, it still is very top heavy, but like having those 4 guys and having these solid players that can hopefully, I don't know if they can, but like hopefully play in the playoffs, that would be a huge W, especially for the context they're in. Now the next winner on my list is the Dallas Mavericks. And sure, the Mavericks didn't make the flashiest moves, but honestly, I like their offseason, especially their free agency. They first re-signed Kyrie Irving to a reasonable deal that wasn't the supermax, nor was it a long-term contract. Only a 3-year deal, and honestly, for one of like the top 2 players in free agency, being able to re-sign him still is still good. And of course, that trade in the trade deadline would have been awful if Kyrie left, so I'm not mad at the deal. I think it could have been way worse, like a 5-year max. That would have been absolutely awful, but only signed him to a 3-year deal. Whereas, I mean, when Kyrie plays, he is worth $40 million. Like, that's perfectly fine for giving him that. So I like that. And they also got Grant Williams, another 3-and-D wing, who's gonna help a lot, especially as like one of those bigger wings. Like they've had like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dorian Finney-Smith, and I think he can definitely replace Dorian Finney-Smith very well. And I mean, he knocks out almost all his corner threes. Boston didn't have the cap to resign him. So I like that. Seth Curry, more offensive power. I mean, sure, he doesn't help their defense, but like just having another guy off the bench that can give you a spark, that's pretty solid. They re-signed Dwight Powell on a pretty solid deal. I mean, they need big man depth, and Dwight Powell, sure, he isn't amazing, but like he's still a solid backup center. And I mean, the Mavs just put themselves in this mess, and it's good to see that they didn't make it worse. It's still quite a flawed roster around Luka and Kyrie, but it's looking better, and maybe they can make some more deals. Maybe they can make a slight trade. I know they want to trade Tim Hardaway Jr. Maybe they can get more defense and just more wings to help with Luka, and another big to help with Luka and Kyrie. So I don't think they did anything bad. Sure, it wasn't anything like blockbuster, but honestly, the Mavs had a pretty good free agency. Now, moving on to the loser side, the first loser has to be the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, overall, the Blazers had a good offseason, of course, drafting Scoots, letting their young guys develop, but before free agency started, they were just in this interesting spot where they had a mix of those young players like Shaedon Sharpe, Scoot, Anthony Simons, but they still had Dame on the roster. And then, first day of free agency, they signed Jeremy Grant on the 5-year, $160 million deal. Not only is it a long-term contract, but it's pretty much an overpay. And then the following day, Dame requested a trade, and they still have this contract to work with. I mean, if Dame requested a trade like before free agency, I'm sure they wouldn't give Grant this long of a contract. Maybe like a 3-year $90 million, because like they had money to spend, but like still, it's just 5 years on that much money. It really isn't good, because they're gonna have Grant on the books for a while, and he most likely won't be able to trade that contract. I mean, sure, the salary cap is going up, but like that's still a lot of money for pretty much not even an all-star caliber player. So I mean, Grant's of course a solid player, 20 points per game on 40% from 3, but like the Blazers really were not good this year, and I think it's still a solid wing for this team. They really lack on wings, especially when they have all of the guard depth and Scoots, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, and so having a solid wing is still really good, but still, it's an overpay. Now, the next loser, in my opinion, is the Houston Rockets, and heading into free agency, the Rockets had pretty much the most money out of everyone, but instead of spacing out all that money to quality players that fit their team, they gave over $200 million to Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet. Now, I don't think Freddie is the worst deal. It's only a 2-year with a team option, and it overall improves their roster, but like, the Brooks contract is a little bit questionable on a 4-year deal. Now, they of course had the money to spend, but like, I'm not sure this is really the best way to spend it, and I really hope that this still gives room for like Jabari, for Amen Thompson, Jalen Green to still play the way they can play. And I mean, they had the money to overpay some players, so maybe they overall improve their roster, but like, I think there were some better options, and we'll see how this works out. Maybe Dillon Brooks is really good, maybe Fred VanVleet is really good, but overall, not really, I would say, the best option for the Houston Rockets. And finally, the last loser we're going to be talking about is the Denver Nuggets. Now, coming off the championship, the Nuggets faced some decisions on Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. And the prior offseason, the Nuggets had one of the most underrated offseasons, where they made a bunch of under-the-radar moves, signing Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, and then trading for KCP. However, after this playoff run, I mean, Jeff Green and Bruce Brown pretty much got paid, especially Bruce Brown. I mean, they just couldn't pay both of them, especially with all the big contracts they have in Jokic, Murray, MPJ, and Gordon. And of course, they couldn't re-sign Bruce Brown to a $20 million deal. They just don't have the money, and the Pacers are willing to give it to him. But like Jeff Green, I think they could have re-signed him. I mean, they gave $5 million to Reggie Jackson, which was really questionable because he didn't even play in the playoffs, and he doesn't really fit on this roster very well. But maybe Justin Holiday's going to be a decent player, and this Nuggets team unfortunately got worse. They of course have Nikola Jokic still, Jamal Murray, MPJ can hopefully improve, Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, and it's still of course a really good team, but they lost a couple of their rotational players that were really crucial in the finals, especially Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. They were solid, especially Jeff Green was a solid vet. Bruce Brown provided energy on both ends, and we'll see. Of course, this team is really good, but not really the best offseason, and they no doubt got worse for the Denver Nuggets. So that being said, that's going to be my winners and losers of 2023 free agency. If you like the video, share the channel, comment down below your thoughts, and I'll see you on next time.